Okay, let's get started again, everybody. Piece of paper again. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We're resuming this afternoon now with a bill hearing. We have 4 bills today. The order is 794, 442, 811, and 814. We're going to start with a bill that I have, Senate Bill 794. I'll ask the panel to come up, Mr. Superintendent, and then I think you have 2 members. Okay, so this is State Department of Education procurement and personnel actions. It's an emergency bill. It is become of the request as I've been having conversations with the superintendent and his folks. It basically does 2 things. The first thing that it does is allows the Maryland State Department of Education and the State Board to establish a human resources management system that is solely for personnel employed by MSDE and the State Board. Other state agencies, as we know, and entities within the government have this kind of flexibility, including the University System of Maryland and the Accountability and Implementation Board, which we're all, of course, learning a lot about as it is starting to take effect as part of the blueprint. This issue was raised, and the need for this was raised to me by the superintendent because of difficulties that he was having in filling key staff to fill critical vacant positions. And let me just add, too, I certainly very much appreciate the relationship that has been developing with the administration as he has taken over, and appreciate his desire to really move quickly to establish everything that needs to be established with the blueprint and move us forward as a state. So the bottom line is for this section about personnel is this need for top talent to competently lead this the critical important matters during the blueprint era. The second is to afford MSDE with the flexibility as it pertains to moving forward with procurements, and this pertains solely to the blueprint. And of course, again, this flexibility has been afforded to the University System of Maryland and to the AIB. We are, as a committee, learning our new role in procurement. And even when there are releases from sort of the standard procurement matters, there are still many safeguards that are maintained even when we do relieve folks from the standard procedures of the procurement. I'm going to just leave it there, I think, in an effort to deal with time. It's an important matter. It's really an important matter. And I'm going to let the superintendent and his team, I think you want to start with your team first and have whatever order you want to go in. You can introduce yourselves and make your presentations.
Thank you, Chair Gazzoni and Vice Chair Rosapep and members of the Budget and Taxation Committee. My name is Chip DeShiel, and I serve as the Vice President of the Maryland State Board of Education. I'm here on behalf of the board in support of Senate Bill 794. When the blueprint for Maryland's future officially became law in February of 2021, the State Board recognized that ensuring a strong future for education in Maryland hinged on the selection of a new superintendent who had the ability to reform the Maryland State Department of Education while simultaneously tackling the unprecedented tasks assigned to MSDE within the blueprint. The State Board has been thrilled with the work that Superintendent Chaudhry and his team have done on rebuilding MSDE. We have made tremendous progress in laying the foundation for the future and for the transformational changes the blueprint demands. However, it is critical that the department have all the tools necessary to make these changes with fidelity and efficacy. This begins with the ability to competitively recruit and hire qualified personnel in a unique job market. The State Board has long been an oversight body for the appointment of personnel within MSDE, and the Board assures the committee that we stand ready to continue this role as the department shifts toward a new personnel management system model with enactment of this legislation. Procurement agility is also necessary to implement the blueprint on the timelines envisioned by the legislature, and it is clear that the legislature intended blueprint procurement efforts be granted this flexibility, as it was also provided to the Accountability Implementation Board. SB 794 would eliminate the inconsistencies that currently impede MSDE's ability to play its vital role as a full partner to the AIB in blueprint implementation. We must all work together to get implementation of the blueprint right for our children, and the State Board believes this is another necessary step to realizing that mission. We ask the committee to issue a favorable report on SB 794. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lori Morrow.
Okay. Whoops. Thank you, Chair Gazzoni, Vice Chair Rosapep, and members of the Budget and Taxation Committee. My name is Lori Morrow, and I serve as the parent member of the Maryland State Board of Education. I, too, am here on behalf of the board in support of Senate Bill 794. Before I was appointed to the State Board in 2020, I spent time here in Annapolis as a parent advocate, working to support your efforts to craft and pass the blueprint for Maryland's future. I was and continue to be grateful for your leadership on behalf of our students and our schools. Passing and funding the blueprint set us up to provide a world-class education to every student in Maryland. As the blueprint transitioned from legislative proposal to new law, I also transitioned from parent advocate to State Board member, responsible for oversight of the Maryland State Department of Education. The most important thing we've done as a State Board to ensure high-quality implementation of the blueprint is hiring our State Superintendent, Mohammed Chaudhry, and supporting his early efforts to build an exceptional leadership team. Great people are, more than anything else, the key to making the blueprint a success over the next 10 years. That is why it is so critical that the department have the flexibility provided in this bill. Recruiting and hiring qualified personnel is about more than a handful of key leadership roles. This bill is about ensuring that we are able to recruit, support, and retain top talent in every position in the agency. I also want to make clear that the State Board and the department would still, under this bill, be subject to collective bargaining provisions. This legislation does not change that. I'll just briefly reiterate what Mr. DeShiel has said about the equal importance of procurement flexibility, which comprises the second half of this bill. In order to move quickly and secure the highest quality supports and partners in implementing the blueprint, the department needs the same procurement flexibility granted to the AIB and the University System of Maryland. The short and long-term success and sustainability of the blueprint depends on having a state education agency that is leading on and supporting the implementation of best practices. This can only happen if the agency has the flexibility to transform itself organizationally and is empowered to be innovative. We should all want that for our state education agency. We ask the committee to issue a favorable report on Senate Bill 794. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Superintendent, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair Gazzoni, Vice Chair Rosapep, and members of the Budget and Taxation Committee. I am Mohammed Chaudhry, State Superintendent of Schools, here in support of Senate Bill 794. I want to thank Chair Gazzoni for sponsoring this very important bill. Over the past 9 months, MSD has embraced a new era for public education for Maryland's 900,000 plus public school students. The new administration has hit the ground running to ensure that the blueprint for Maryland's future is implemented with fidelity and efficacy. The blueprint tasks the department with an unprecedented amount of challenging work and ambitious timelines. We will complete this work and we will do it well. However, to create transformational change, MSDE needs the flexibility to recruit, hire, and retain top-level talent at every level of the organization. The ability to establish our own human resources management system will allow the department to hire innovative and experienced staff while offering hiring packages that are competitive statewide and across the country. MSDE has been working to maximize existing positional resources and flexibility already by examining existing vacancies and identifying opportunities for reclassification, reorganization, and repurposing of positions. The department initiated this work in the summer of 2021. Reclassification and reorganization allowed MSD to fill more of its positions in several instances, and doing so with human capital at the grade and salary required to recruit competitive talent. This type of strategic restructuring of positions is critical to MSD's ability to implement the blueprint and lead Maryland schools successfully. These positions are an essential first step to build MSD's capacity to fully support the legal requirements specified in the blueprint for Maryland's future, and shows this administration's commitment to working within whatever parameters exist to advance this work. However, working within existing parameters did not, in some cases, allow for sufficient flexibility to offer competitive salaries. Strategic reclassification of positions under current constraints does not solve the agency-wide structural issues that prevent competitive recruiting of top talent across the agency's 1,300-plus positions. Many federal jobs and local systems pay substantially more, and the University System of Maryland has substantial flexibility to design its own personnel system. To ensure successful implementation of the blueprint, MSD needs similar freedom. The procurement flexibility established in SB 794 matters related to the blueprint similarly are vital to the success of this landmark legislation. I want to end with nothing in this legislation will impinge upon existing collective bargaining requirements to meet goals on minority and women-owned businesses. It will empower you to create a department that is built for the blueprint, and that is what I seek to do. So I appreciate your consideration for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for witnesses? Senator?
Thank you. Thank you, board members and the superintendent. I get the big picture. I don't get the little picture. And I want to separate into two categories. Let's start with procurement. I mean, I've heard about procurement problems at MSD for as long as I've been in the legislature. So you don't have to convince me there's a problem. But I'm not really clear what the problem is and how this solves it. So I need like an example of how does it work now and how would it work under this bill?
Sure. School systems are able to procure faster than me, given the layers of train stops that are required for governmental entities right now to procure things. I think that's going to slow the department down. The timelines embedded in the blueprint, for example, I'm required to do a massive study to see whether the CCR standard is right. I'm required to put out a report with a vendor on how the career ladder should look like. This is just one of many
No, I get that's the
things,
need,
yeah.
but my question is, how are the current rules stopping you from doing that, and how would this change
The
it?
timelines that are set and the wait periods.
And what are they? That's what I'm asking you.
And they're months, and versus when they could be shaved down to 30 days.
And
Or
how does it do that?
essentially, it would create that flexibility from provisions in the existing law for governmental entities and apply it instead to the provisions for like the University of Maryland, the school system, and the AIB.
Well, I at least would appreciate something on paper from your department explaining that, a little chart that shows existing law under this bill, so we can kind of see how that works.
We will get that over to you.
That would be great. Then on the employment side, how many, basically you want to be able to hire some number of people at more competitive compensation packages. Is that the essence of it?
Correct?
Okay. About how many people do you have in your department?
1,300.
And about how many people, do you see this applying to all 1,300? Do you see this applying to 100?
I would like to raise the grade of every job category and grade in every family and job category that make up the 1,300. Yes, I would like to elevate the pay of staff that are in assistant and administrative support positions all the way up to the leadership.
And what other change would this make?
What other change it would
I mean,
make?
basically, raise everybody's salary. I got that. We need to do that
Yes.
across state government. I got that.
Yes, and it would also create a more predictable ability to promote people and aspire to a set of promotional opportunities within a grade that is much more competitive versus the confusing structure that it currently exists.
Again, if we could get that on a piece of paper, comparing
Sure.
current structure and proposed structure, that'd be helpful. Thank you,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Eckert?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. It's good to work with you here today. I did want to follow up on the good senator at the head of the table. Currently, if teachers are going to, or if your staff are going to be hired in, they have to go through the current state personnel system, is that correct?
Currently, all of my staffing decisions are under the state's personnel system, so
So let me proceed with that. I mean, that system has changed through the years, and I think right now, almost anybody can go in and go online and look for positions that they want to apply for, and they apply, and then you have to try to sift through who really applies and who doesn't apply. So it gets, from my perspective, from what I hear, pretty cumbersome. Is that correct?
that is correct.
And then I've heard from other departments that a lot of times, by the time you start going through that sifting process, if you had somebody who is ready to be hired, by the time you spend going through that, they may have gone somewhere else to look for a job. Does that fit your situation too?
That is correct. The ability to bring them on efficiently and effectively. I moved much faster during my district days than since I've come here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, I guess I didn't realize that you all were in that same system as
Yeah.
well, and that's helpful. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this panel? Okay, thank you very much. We have a couple more people signed up to testify.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Denise Gilmore, Alicia Hawkins, and Phyllis Coleman.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Denise Gilmore. I'm a field director with AFSCME Council 3. We represent 30,000 state and higher education employees, including the dedicated women and men who work for the Maryland State Department of Education. We are opposed to Senate Bill 794. We're opposed to creating an independent personnel system for the MSDE or state board. The state personnel management system was created with certainly the goal to put in place a fair system for personnel transactions, everything from promotions and demotions to, addressing employee grievances, layoff rights. All of these are contained in the state personnel management system. We worked very hard with many members on this committee several years ago to pass and enact legislation that removes special appointments from the State Department of Education prior to 2019. They were one of the worst offenders in the state for special appointees. We stand against this practice for many reasons, but the biggest being that these are dedicated civil servants who perform their job, and they deserve to have the same rights and protections that other state employees and other state agencies have. There's nothing special about the MSDE in terms of how it should be treating its employees. The system that other state agencies use to get employees in the door to process those personnel transactions, works fine for those agencies. If the department has had trouble recruiting, I know this committee in particular is very aware of the challenges that all state agencies have had with recruiting. We certainly are happy to work with, the department to raise the salaries. We think that's necessary to help. And we, certainly believe they can do that within the current confines of the SPMS system. But to create an entirely separate personnel system for them to allow them to, have these employees be at-will special appointees, we think is incredibly short-sighted, and we urge the committee to provide an unfavorable report on SB 794. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also have a member with us from the local that represents MSDE who just wants to talk a little bit more.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Phyllis Coleman. I'm a member of ASME's Local 3644. I work for MSDE as a Physical Accounting Tech 2. I'm testifying against SB 794. I oppose SB 794 because I've worked for 4 different state agencies in my career and have never dealt with this or concerns like this. I've given the state of Maryland 23 years of most of my adult life. It doesn't matter who the governor is or the superintendent is. We still have a job to do. So I don't see why this bill is needed. We all deserve to have the same merit rights and protections. We all pay into the same health benefits and pension. We all dedicated public servants. So I'm asking, please, don't take these rights from hardworking MSDE employees like me. I urge the committee to vote no on SB 794. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Felicia Hawkins with Maryland Professional Employees Council. We represent over 5,000 state employees, and we are here today asking for an unfavorable report on SB 794. This bill would give the Department of Education powers unlike any other agency in Maryland. SB 794 clarifies that MSDE would not have to follow the normal protocols and procedures for hiring, advancement, or termination. It also allows the agency to replace professional positions with temporary and contractual workers. For decades, Maryland has recognized the need to ensure its residents receive quality services from state agencies. As a state, we understand the importance of treating state employees as professionals and providing a defined path for employment and objective procedures for dispute resolution. This bill would undo that principle. MSDE argues that the changes requested are necessary to implement the goals and objectives for improving Maryland's public education as outlined in the blueprint for Maryland's future. This is not the case. In fact, it does the opposite. The mantra coming from the Kerwin Commission is that as a state, we should appropriately compensate public education workers and offer them ample support for opportunities to grow as educational professionals. This bill would curtail education workers' rights to privatize or deprofessionalize their positions by providing them to temporary contractual workers. We strongly call for an unfavorable report for Senate Bill 794. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for this panel? Okay, thank you all very much. We appreciate it. I don't have anyone else signed up for this. So I am going to move on to the next bill. Actually, we're going to skip one. We're going to go to Senator Hester, 811.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. As you may recall, I've been doing a lot of work in cybersecurity over the past few years. And for the record, Senator Katie Fry-Hester, proud to represent District 9, and here on Modernized Maryland Bill, Senate Bill 811. So on January 27th, we had a briefing between EHE and B&T on a report that the Maryland Cybersecurity Council had done, looking at threats to state and local government from cybersecurity incidents. The subcommittee of the council included the Maryland Department of Information Technology, the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, the University of Maryland Center for Health and Homeland Security, and the Maryland Association of Counties and the Maryland Municipal League. So one of the things that they did throughout this research, throughout the interim, was to look at all 114 IT systems that we have across the state executive branch. And what they found, and this was a study conducted by DoIT, is that half of our systems are outdated or legacy systems. And what this means is that these government systems no longer meet minimum security requirements or can receive technical support from the manufacturer or developer in order to complete their day-to-day operations. So it goes without saying that this is fairly concerning, that these systems are both expensive to maintain and introduce significant vulnerabilities into our state systems. The attack on the Maryland Department of Health is kind of an epitome of this case. As a result of these disruptions, we've really experienced, kinetic effects on the ground. Local governments and hospitals are still struggling to conduct their day-to-day operations. It's hard to get a nursing license. There's been problems distributing HIV/AIDS medication, and even ordering basic meals and prescription at Springfield Hospital is still an issue. The current estimate is that in order to repair the damage that's been caused, it's going to cost at least $50 million to get the Maryland Department of Health up to where it needs to be. However, the bigger issue is that to modernize the Department of Health, it could cost $2 billion. In order to resolve these issues and finally bring our state's IT and cybersecurity capacity into the 21st century, Senate Bill 811 does three things. First, Senate Bill 811 establishes an independent statewide reporting framework and oversight commission to develop our state's modernization roadmap for the next decade and ensure that information held by our state agencies on our residents maintains its confidentiality and integrity. To this effect, the commission's membership contains key representatives from the executive branch, General Assembly, private sector experts in modernization, and citizens representatives. The roadmap will require specific timeline and budgetary projections in order to update critical systems by 2026 and all systems by 2030. Second, Senate Bill 811 requires the department to hire an independent contractor to develop a framework for this analysis, identification and prioritization of our legacy systems for modernization, based on factors like technical fit, business fit, customer experience, and the maintenance/operational costs. Finally, once this roadmap and framework have been developed, the bill authorizes DoIT as the primary procurement unit specifically for IT and cybersecurity related modernization efforts. The streamlining of the procurement process is absolutely critical to ensure timely and efficient modernization of our most outdated and most critical systems, and is in line with the procurement process for the Maryland Department of Transportation and the University System of Maryland. You should have a copy of the amendment and interlineated language on your desk or being passed around. It's here somewhere. I will note that there's currently $334 million in the budget for the major IT development projects, the MDDP fund. This is a significant starting investment, and probably more than we could even spend in the first year, given the current pace of procurement. However, it will not be nearly enough given the magnitude of the problem we face. So one of the things that you'll see in the interlineated version is that instead of authorizing the Maryland Stadium Authority to issue bonds, we asked this work group to spend a year, look at a revenue funding source, and also look in more detail at the procurement process. So that is struck out of the first part of the bill. I cannot stress the importance of this legislation in ensuring that our citizens' data is safe and that they receive high-quality, modern government services. Each of us has had to manage constituent cases where there is an unacceptable delay in licensing, permitting, or another application process. And we've seen these impacts of outdated IT and cybersecurity systems for years in Maryland. Senate Bill 811 provides a well-structured, targeted method for our state to take necessary modernization steps. And for that reason, I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 811.
Thank you. If you want to let your panel introduce themselves.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sam Bell. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Edwards Performance Solution. And I want to talk a little bit about what the first and second year might look like under this plan. We understand that this is a very large lift and that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And we would see that the initial year would be a transition year, going through and establishing the program, the cybersecurity program for the state, making sure that all the assessments and surveys that were done are actually completed, that there's really a holistic picture of the environment, and that that we would be able to use that information to identify the high-level gaps and the large projects that would be needed by the state. And then, after that, within year two, starting to work on some of the small lift projects as well as the major initiatives. But the key thing here would be year one would really be spent developing that roadmap, identifying similar functionality across state systems, and developing that plan to spend as well as to secure our information assets. Some of the high-level types of projects that we would expect to see would be things along the lines of identity management, audit and reporting, incident response, policy consistency, those types of things that presently right now are very difficult to do on an agency-by-agency basis. And once this is done and this functionality has been identified, then start to move to centralize the security of those systems and make those improvements. So I would like to recommend that we have a favorable report on State Bill 811. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairwoman, and committee members. My name is Amanda Tate, and I work for a company called GCOM Software. My role within GCOM is Senior Director of Legacy System Modernization. On behalf of GCOM Software, I offer this testimony in support of Senate Bill 811, State Government Information Technology and Cybersecurity-Related Infrastructure, also known as the Modernized Maryland Act of 2022. GCOM has worked with the state of Maryland for over 20 years. Our employees live and work within Maryland, and we have been and continue to be deeply committed to the evolution of our state systems. In 2020, Maryland citizens and state employees immediately, just like other states, required remote or virtual options to both work and do business. As a result, legacy system modernization has become even more crucial to state government success. Modernization is no longer a mid to long-range plan. Improvements must be made in short order. Due to increasingly scarce resources, designs that are largely transactional, and the soaring costs to maintain, legacy systems no longer meet business needs. States must move away from data collection and reporting systems to customer-centric solutions. Newer technology supports new ways to do business and deliver better outcomes for residents, state workers, and agency leadership. It is important to note that legacy technology systems are more vulnerable to cyber breaches and attacks. State agencies currently have limited options of integrating new cybersecurity tools into their programming code, their mainframe systems, and outdated hosting environments. Legacy systems also require expensive remediation to upgrade their outdated code to current standards. In many instances, it costs states more to update a legacy system than it would to plan and invest in modernization. With this bill, Maryland can better protect its systems by upgrading to modern languages, tools, and technologies, and apply state-of-the-art cybersecurity protections. Maryland can also use this modernization effort to enhance residents' experience with government. For the reasons stated above, we respectfully request this committee to support the passage of Senate Bill 811 and issue a favorable report. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am here to offer support for Senate Bill 811, Information Technology and Cybersecurity Related Infrastructure. My name is Mark Lepker, and I am the Director of Education at the National Cryptologic Foundation. I began my cybersecurity profession while in the Air Force in 1990, and retiring from the National Security Agency in 2017, I joined the foundation. We have built a robust education program focused on K-12 cybersecurity awareness, education, and promoting cyber professions. Our students are learning the importance of ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data systems. They gain understanding that the security risks to the system, its performance, mission, and cost to maintain and operate the technology and human capital are critical elements in providing cybersecurity. These are among the 8 big ideas of our cybersecurity curriculum guidelines used by educators to develop those in-classroom materials. These students may be your future workforce, filling the critical positions to upgrade Maryland's information technology and cybersecurity related infrastructure. This bill is fundamental to ensuring speed and agility in defending Maryland's networks from adversaries seeking to attack infrastructure, healthcare, school systems, finance, and other essential services used daily by our citizens. The level of digital connectivity has provided more opportunities for adversaries to disrupt critical infrastructure, damage our economic institutions, and destroy private lives. Shortfalls in agility and technical expertise must be addressed. Establishing this Information Technology and Cybersecurity Fund provides the resources to meet the challenges of an ever-evolving cyber threat landscape, workforce and education issues, and development of sound resiliency practices to keep Maryland state systems safe and protect privacy. The elements of this bill to establish a commission overseeing updates and investments in critical information technology and cybersecurity systems is like successful approaches we used in the Department of Defense. Leveraging this standards in their cybersecurity framework aligns Maryland's efforts with proven tactics, techniques, and procedures to thwart adversary behavior, thereby safeguarding our data systems. This bill is fundamental to Maryland's IT and cybersecurity health. We respectfully request this committee to support the passage of Senate 811 and issue a favorable report.
Thank you very much. Questions for the senator or her panel? Senator?
Yeah, I have one question for whoever wants to answer it. Big picture, the solution to this is mostly replacing our systems with new systems, or is mostly going into the cloud?
It'd be a combination of both, and I think that's part of what the assessment would need to determine which ones would go to the cloud as opposed to which ones will be upgraded in place. Going to the cloud by itself doesn't necessarily answer all of the problems, so we'd have to see, what cloud services are available that would provide the capabilities that maybe are being done in-house now, and see if those are the types of things that we would move to.
So there's not yet enough experience in the federal government and the private sector dealing with the same issues that we have a sense already of strategy. This committee really's got to figure it all out.
I think it's fair to say that there are other states that are moving forward with significant modernization efforts. And your point about the cloud is well taken. However, when we look at the legacy modernization needs across the state, every agency is going to be a little bit different, and what they consider a legacy system is going to differ. I think we focus primarily on the agencies that are still operating larger mainframe systems, which are 40 to 50 years old. And in those instances, you're right. Those are likely systems that need to be replaced and moved into the cloud and off on-prem data centers. Some of the smaller systems could be remediated as they are and apply the newer technologies that these gentlemen have spoken of to protect us in terms of cybersecurity issues.
So it's like tearing down very old buildings and building a new building, and if you
In
have a
some-
newer building, repair it. That's essentially the metaphor?
Yes, sir. In
Okay.
some cases, we would need to build a new building. In
Gotcha.
others, maybe we make an addition.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Thank you very much. Tasha Cornish? John Fiastro?
Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Budget and Tax Committee. My name is John Fiastro, here on behalf and representing CAMI, Cybersecurity Association of Maryland, Inc. We want to thank first Senator Hester for all of her leadership on this issue over the last year and all for support for the Modernized Maryland Act of 2022. Also, we'd like to thank the Senator for adding the recommended amendment to include Cybersecurity Association of Maryland within the independent statewide reporting framework and oversight commission. Joining me today is Executive Director for the Cybersecurity Association of Maryland, Tasha Cornish, with additional comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Gazzone and Vice Chair Rosapep and the committee here today for the opportunity to provide testimony. By building on the existing knowledge of the Maryland state government and allocating necessary resources, this bill will elevate the state's cybersecurity posture in a really meaningful way. This bill puts forth a prioritization system that is based on sound cybersecurity principles, taking into account technical fit, business fit, citizen experience, and maintenance and operational cost. The timeline proposed is appropriately aggressive while being operational feasible, in our opinion. As the leading cyber trade association, our 600-plus corporate members care passionately and are committed to our state and local government's cyber resilience. We want to again thank the Senator for adding us and the committee in adding us to this bill. In this heightened threat environment, we know that we can no longer delay these investments and improvements. Outdated and no longer supported by the vendors, as we've heard, legacy systems are a leading entry point for cyber criminals. We can't leave our resiliency as a state compromised with this known vulnerability that has a concrete actionable fix as proposed through this modernization bill. Thank you again. We urge a favorable report. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dominic Butchko, Michael Eismer.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much for having me today. For the record, my name is Dominic Butchko with the Maryland Association of Counties. Before I begin, I just want to thank Senator Hester for her work on this incredibly important issue over the past year. A strong partnership between state and local governments is essential for safeguarding critical infrastructure and defending against increasingly complex cyber attacks. Actually, as we speak today, county cyber leaders are being briefed by federal officials on the ongoing war in Ukraine and potential spillover and implications that could mean for our local governments. SB 811 is the first step in the right direction to strengthening our cybersecurity infrastructure. We need to work together to protect the sensitive information of our mutual constituents and ensure continuity of government. MACO advocates for the state to offer its county partners shared service agreements, 24/7 network monitoring, real-time incident response, statewide risk assessments, and a dedicated cybersecurity support fund to help local governments upgrade our IT infrastructure. SB 811 is the right step and the necessary step in protecting our cyber systems. Cooperation, coordination, and partnership is the only way to keep all Marylanders safe. Accordingly, MACo requests a favorable report with amendments on SB 811. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Gazone and committee members, and thank you for allowing me the time to come and testify on behalf of the University System of Maryland. My name is Michael Eismeyer, and I'm the Vice Chancellor for IT of the University System. I come today on behalf of the system to ask for an amendment to SB 811 excluding the University System from the bill. By way of context, the USM is comprised of 12 institutions, all of whom have dedicated personnel focused on IT infrastructure and cybersecurity. All institutions are required by statute to develop standards and policies that are functionally compatible with those developed by state DOIT for the executive branch. And each institution, as well as the system office, is accountable to the Maryland Board of Regents. As such, the USM has developed an evolving set of standards serving as the baseline from which each of our institutions builds their cyber security and data privacy programs specific to institutional needs. Each institution is audited with the same frequency as executive branch agencies by Office of Legislative Audits, and we are also each audited periodically by USM internal audits and third-party auditors. Under the Board of Regents' mandate to monitor and account for enterprise risk across the system, the USMO and our institutions, USM office and our institutions have built funding mechanisms and accountability measures to reduce the growing risk associated with cybersecurity and data privacy. Given our current and evolving measures for oversight by the Board of Regents and System Office and our ability thus far to fund our current and future cyber program needs, we again respectfully request that SB 811 be amended to exclude USM from the bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions for either of these witnesses? Senator Roosevelt.
All right. For the university system, I don't get it. I mean, you guys have had very serious cybersecurity problems, as we all know. I don't understand how this bill hurts you.
I don't know that it necessarily hurts us. I think, part of the language in the bill is additional oversight from state DOIT, and, we feel that the oversight and programs of accountability that are built into our cybersecurity programs and IT oversight programs might be confounded by the extra oversight and so forth that would be applied by DOIT under this bill.
Okay, if you got some specific concerns like that, I'd love to hear them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is David Wraith, are you here and wanting to testify?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is David Wraith, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Maryland Stadium Authority. The Maryland Stadium Authority has presented written testimony that should be included in your packet. We're not here today to take a position on the bill. We just wanted to address some concerns that the Stadium Authority had with the bill prior to any amendments being done. This bill has the Maryland Stadium Authority as only a funding source for the Department of Information and Technology. Historically, the Stadium Authority has always had oversight when it comes to procurement and the expenditures of any bond proceeds for any of the projects that it has been involved with. This bill has the authority issuing debt and then transferring all the funds over to do it. The Maryland Stadium Authority Board takes great pride in having the fiduciary responsibility of making sure that the bond proceeds for each and every project assigned to the authority is spent in the intended purpose of the program that was established. Traditionally, projects that are funded by the Maryland Stadium Authority and their bonds have been for buildings and not typically this type of, program. This particular bill does not provide the authority with any type of oversight, role, or responsibility as it pertains to the project when it comes to the actual projects to be determined, the funding available for those projects, or anything under the program. Also, under the proposed bill,
Can I stop you for a second? Have you seen the?
no, I did not, so that's
Okay.
why I
Yeah,
apologize.
it's okay. No, it's fine. You've been taken out of the bill.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Okay, that concludes the hearing on 8:11. Now we're on 8:14. Senator Hester?
Thank you, Chair Gazzoni, Vice Chair Rosapep, members of the esteemed Budget and Tax Committee. For the record, Senator Katie Fry Hester, here on Senate Bill 814. Last year, Maryland became a national leader by establishing the Resilient Revolving Loan Fund. And one of the most common questions I get from the chair, as well as from others, is when is this going to be set up and how can I apply for a loan? The short answer is that we were ahead of our time. We've been waiting for the federal government to promulgate regulations. And in the meantime, national discourse has changed a bit. I'm here with these small changes aligned with these recent developments to ensure that the program is set up and operational as quickly as possible. Senate Bill 814 makes the following changes to the already established Resilient Revolving Loan Fund. First, following the passages of the Storm Act, the financial industry expressed interest in loaning hundreds of billions of dollars to increase available funds for retrofitting buildings against natural hazards. Senate Bill 814 will allow the Maryland Revolving Loan Fund to leverage these private dollars by establishing a new restricted fund within the original loan program, specifically for private capital directing towards the retrofitting of buildings. Second, while the revolving loan fund provides low or no interest loans payments, these may still be out of reach for low-income families in Maryland. Therefore, Senate Bill 814 allows a provision to allow for loan forgiveness under certain circumstances. Finally, the bill makes administration of the fund an eligible cost so that MDEM can hire its administrative staff. Under the wisdom and foresight of this committee, a position was originally added to the Department of Emergency Management in order to manage the fund. However, since the administration of the fund was not included as an eligible use of the fund, they were unable to hire for the position. With the changes proposed, Maryland can double down on its investment, use state funds to leverage private funds, and bring the nation's first resilient loan fund into better alignment with the federal regulations. With this bill, we can make the first resilient loan fund in the United States even better. For these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 814.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else signed up, but.
Do you mind? He's here all the way from Louisiana.
Holy cow.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you.
Introduce yourself. I'm sorry, it's my fault for not setting you up properly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Committee Chair Gazzoni and Vice Chair Rosapep. I hope I didn't butcher that too bad. I'm not known for my French pronunciations in New Orleans. The Budget and Taxation Committee members and bill sponsor, Senator Hester, who we have worked with for a year now and are very excited about. I'm Roderick Scott. I'm the board chair of the private sector nonprofit Flood Mitigation Industry Association. We are the companies and professionals that create, manufacture, and distribute flood control products and provide professional assessment and project design services to keep buildings from flooding. Our sister organization, the International Association of Structural Movers, members elevate and relocate buildings to prevent them from flooding. The climate is changing, the seas are rising, and the storms are becoming more frequent and intense. Ellicott City, Annapolis, the Maryland shores are all examples where these changes are affecting us now with rising flood risk. Our industry estimates 3 to 4 million of these older high flood risk buildings built before the first flood maps, so not to any standards, in U.S. flood zones. Buildings are assets, and they are part of our infrastructure. We must have buildings for housing, work, learning, and worship. Buildings produce vital property taxes, revenues that fund our schools and government operations. The rising flood risk is now resulting in radical rates for flood insurance for these flood vulnerable buildings, and that's only increasing. Rising flood risk and flood insurance rates threatens the values of these buildings, which then threatens the revenue streams. Our industry knows how to retrofit these buildings. Flood hazard mitigation projects reduce flood risk and flood insurance rates. The only thing that has been missing is the financing. I am honored to be here today to testify on behalf of Bill 814, which would provide that mechanism to bring those funds down from Washington, right up the road here, and get those funds to communities for matching large federal projects. So that's one portion of it, the appropriated dollars, and the restricted funds so that nobody can grab those. We can do our buildings and be safe and resilient. I live in a community across from New Orleans with a 5-foot seawall, 17 floods in 15 years. We just went through our third 9-foot surge in 15 years with Ida, but I only had 59 flooded buildings this time compared to 800 in Katrina. We were back in business in a week. That is flood resiliency. So thank you. I ask for a favorable reading on this bill.
Thank you very much. So, Senator, remind everybody, we put $25 million last year into this fund, and under the program, it's supposed to generate.
So last year, we put $25 million of state funds. That can be matched 90-10 with the Federal Storm Act. So you could add $225 million from the Storm Act to the fund for a total of $250 million. And then there's another program called the Building Resilient Infrastructures and Communities Grant Fund. And so what, a city like Ellicott City could do is borrow $10 million in a low or no interest loan from this fund, and then apply for a grant from the BRIC grant program, which is a 1-to-4 match. So they get $30 million grant on the $10 million low interest loan for $40 million. So effectively, if everything worked exactly right, the state could be leveraging $1 billion across the state. And this, just to be really clear, we're not asking for any more money this year. This extra restricted fund is so the private sector can add money to it as well, because they want to help out.
Okay. Questions for the senator or witness? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senator Jackson. You weren't being punished by being put late.
No. As a
you-
matter of fact,
as a-
it was my mistake. I thought the county commissioner president was going to be here, but Ms. Sharon Strand, the director of finance and
Oh,
budget, is here, so I'm good.
Okay, apologize. Well, there'll be a prize at the end, I promise.
No
No,
problem.
there will be.
I'm still waiting to go to JPR, so I can't go anywhere. So, good afternoon, Chair Gazzoni. For the record, Senator Michael Jackson, in my capacity as Chair of the Calvert County, tremendously large delegation, Senate delegation of 2 members, and on behalf of Senate Bill 442, Calvert County Public Facilities Bond Request. Senate Bill 442 simply authorizes the county commissioners of Calvert County to borrow $13.183 million to finance a few projects, including renovation of a Calvert Senior Center, Breezy Point Shoreline Restoration, Lower Marlboro Culvert, existing storm drainage systems around the county, and the West Prince Frederick Water Storage Tank, and other related costs. In addition, members, there's also an amendment before you, or you should have an amendment, that adds an additional $15 million to bring the total to $28 million. And that's for the fire department in Solomon's Island. With me from Calvert County government, again, Ms. Sharon Strand, who was newly appointed in November. Welcome aboard as the Director of Finance and Budget. Here to testify if necessary, but definitely to answer questions if you have any. But with that, Mr. Chairman and members, I ask for a favorable report. Local legislation, Calvert is one of 6 county commissioner form of governments who have to come before us unable to create that debt. Ms. Strand.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Vice Chair. I'm Sharon Strand, the Director of Finance and Budget for County Calvert Government, and I'm here to express the Board of County Commissioners' support for this bill. I also just would like to mention that Calvert County has, again, been reaffirmed with a AAA bond rating from the 3 major rating agencies. We asked for a favorable report on Senate Bill 422 and 442, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a question, Senator? Senator Young?
You're looking for permission to do a bond issue?
Correct.
Okay.
One of 6 counties that have to come before you. I'll have another one for you in about a week or so.
Okay. Very good. That concludes the hearing. We're going to go right into a voting session, but we need to turn off the system. It should take. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We're back. We're doing a voting session. First up is 442, Senate Bill 442, one we just heard seconds ago. All those in favor? Oh, we need amendments. I'm sorry. We have the amendments that you mentioned, and we also have an amendment to the title, which was, yep. All those in favor as amended? Opposed? There you go. You bet. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got.
We can pass the same way. Nice try.
Right. All right, we're going to move to the Medco, where was that one?
560.
560, because there were questions, and we have Amy Velich and Bob Page, I think it is?
Yep.
Do you have questions? Do you have a question about any of this? Okay.
Okay, you guys do have a reprint on your desk. As a reminder, this is the bill dealing with student housing that is operated by Medco and various lease provisions. The bill essentially does 2 things. First, it would require basically on the lease itself to provide notice to anyone renting the space that it is a Medco-owned unit. The reprint on your desk has a couple of, I would consider them to be technical amendments from Medco, just putting in the correct terms instead of rental lease, residential lease, occupancy agreement. And then the second part of what the bill does is, the amendments don't touch on this, is basically requiring any Medco student housing to close, if a University System of Maryland closes a university-owned residential housing, that a Medco-owned one has to do that same treatment. Obviously, coming out of, the issue arose with the pandemic and the closure of systems and housing units. The chairman wanted the two representatives, one from Medco, one from USM. They testified about some issues that they saw in the bill.
Why don't you go over that real quick, if you would? There was parts of it you were fine with, and then there seemed to be some issues with part of it also.
Thank you, Chair Gazone and Vice Chair Rosapep and members of the committee. My name's Bob Page. I'm Associate Vice Chancellor for Financial Affairs with the university system. We wholeheartedly support the intentions of this bill. From our perspective, the provisions affecting 10-131 are completely appropriate, and we wholly support those.
What's that? Which ones are those?
The provisions in 10-132, however,
I know, I just wanted to say it again, so everybody's on the same page.
would impact the system's debt capacity and potentially impair our bond rating. Just last month, we issued bonds again at a very good rate. We've held our bond rating at AA+, one notch down from AAA for the last 11 years. In large part because of the success of our relationship with Medco in providing student housing. The student housing is intended to be differentiated and different from university-owned housing stock, though. And that's where we think that the provisions of 10-131 really help both students and their parents and families avoid the situation we had the last year or two.
Okay, tell us exactly how the other, you said it's possible bond issues. Explain that a little more. What?
Sure. The bond rating agencies don't tag the university system with the debt of our public-private partnerships on two bases. One, that the universities don't financially support the projects, and two, that the projects are financially viable and operating according to the bondholders' expectations. So those bondholders' expectations are that each of the projects produce what's called debt service coverage. It's a measure of net income of 120% of annual debt service. The provisions of 10-132 distort the financial market implications that are built into the arrangements, so that to the rating agencies it may look, and in fact, if we were to come to another public health crisis, it may set the table for a further weakening of these public-private partnership projects. And in that case, the rating agencies would attribute the debt of these public-private partnerships to the university system's debt capacity. In total, that debt is about $260 million. And that could potentially trigger a downgrade in the system's bond rating.
So, but what specifically in that provision would trigger that relationship that they would then believe that it was appropriate to account it towards your debt?
So the provisions that relate to termination arrangements for if a student or their family want out of a lease are a reflection of the local market housing conditions. And so if they were required to adopt termination provisions that were the same as the university had for its own student housing, those projects, the public-private partnership projects, are standalone entities that they would be financially harmed potentially by having that provision. Compared with the university housing, which sits on a larger base of students and activity and is backed by the university system's entire revenue base.
Right. So if the Medco housing wasn't, if you hadn't come up with this mechanism to provide this housing through this partnership, you would have had to provide, I believe, or do you believe, the equivalent amount of additional housing?
Yeah, in total, Medco has been instrumental in providing close to $500 million worth of student housing over a little bit more than 21 years. That's 7,000 beds at 7 of our universities. That $500 million of financed activity allowed us to construct a lot of projects that otherwise wouldn't have been possible.
So if you were doing that, if somehow you were able to produce that housing, that would have obviously been on your debt load.
Yes.
And so, but your contention is simply that even though that were the case, your conditions for borrowing are so different that it would not have provided the same sort of negative effect that closing down the Medco units would. Is that, am I being clear?
Well, we set these arrangements up in the public-private partnership so that Medco and its operator of the student housing have control over the arrangements and the design of the license deals to occupy those beds. At the point where the university is given greater control, the rating agencies may see a greater connection between the university and the projects, and on that basis as well, attribute the debt of the P3s to the university system.
Right. Senator Elfreth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am struggling. I appreciate the kind of overarching concern that you do not want the rating agencies to suddenly place this debt over you. And Senator Rosepep and I served on the Board of Regents and are very familiar with why we moved to P3s. And it did enable us to create 7,000 beds without adding to the debt ceiling. At the same time, though, we have a system in which students are not choosing necessarily whether they're going to land in university-based housing or Medco-based housing necessarily. And you resisting this piece of the bill says that those students should, through no choice of their own, have a different set of notification standards and ability to exit the lease standards than students living in university-based housing. I feel like there needs to be a middle ground here, because what occurred during the pandemic was wildly inappropriate. I know many of us heard from our constituents. So I appreciate the bill sponsor's attempt to mitigate that here, and I hear your concern. And I'm struggling for a solution here, but I'm not sure taking you out of this section is the solution. I think we have to strive for something smarter.
Yeah, Amy may correct me, but my impression and belief is that students and their families do have a choice between contracting with the university for its own university-owned housing or availing themselves of what are more modern and featured housing that was offered by Medco and its operator.
That's correct. I'm sorry to jump in. So though we're considered on-campus housing, if there's any residency requirements, students are able to choose whether they want to live with the university, Medco housing, or another third-party housing entity.
I appreciate that. I'm thinking, my alma mater, Towson University, for instance, limited, like many of our institutions, limited on-campus housing opportunities. So students are going to jump at any opportunity, and when they're making that decision, Medco housing is also, from my understanding, more expensive in some circumstances than.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like sometimes we don't appreciate that we are in the policy bubble, and the vast majority, 99% of Marylanders, are living their lives and not understanding the difference between Medco housing and traditional housing. And And I think that's what the bill is trying to create a more even playing field. Again, I don't have a solution, but removing you from this, I don't think is the solution. So, Mr. Chair, I wonder if we could work with the bill sponsor and try to find a resolution. I know we don't have time for it today, but
Right.
I am concerned.
Yeah. I want to go to the disclosure question, and I haven't read the details of the bill on the disclosure part. What do you see as your requirement as far as disclosure?
We wholeheartedly support having more transparency with the students and the parents who are entering into these leases. We have already started taking and changing the languages and what we're calling our occupancy agreements. Between our various schools, we have a variety of licenses, and housing contracts. So the only clarification we have is to kind of technically change that language to say occupancy agreements to make it more comprehensive to cover all of our contracts with the USM schools that are affiliated with the USM schools. But we have already started that for fiscal year '23. Every student who is signing a lease for this upcoming fall and spring 2023 are seeing a license with Medco's name bolded, throughout the agreement, a separate cover sheet in the front illustrating that, as well as information on who to contact at the management office. So we've already implemented that, despite this bill still being in the process.
Is there a separate signature line for the acknowledgement of your management or owner, or the situation of Medco being
So-
Medco Housing, or is it an initial, how's it done?
So each license is a little, or housing or occupancy agreement is a little different, but we've followed all of the requests of this particular bill. In addition, the parents and the students typically need to sign on the bottom of each page. So again, showing if Medco shows up within the document, that they see that Medco is a separate entity. On the back page, it has Medco's name as well as the student that's signing it. Medco does not need to sign off on each individual agreement. That process is handled with our third-party housing management companies. So though we don't sign off, our name is throughout the document, which we have now bolded, emphasized, and added that cover page.
Senator?
Yeah, just picking up with that issue, I mean, this is in my district, I know these buildings very well. They look like, they feel like, they smell like, they operate like regular old on-campus housing. That's why everybody's confused. I think it's great to have this stuff in the lease, but maybe we gotta fix the language to make clear. It's also gotta be somehow much more clear that the university doesn't run it. I mean, there are RAs in there, so if it feels to students like the university's all in it. So I think that has to be not just clear in the lease, 10 pages of I'm signing something, but I think the branding of it needs to be separated and be more like the off-campus privately owned housing, like University View and Varsity and those, that people know they're private. These are more like private than they're like the university, and they don't look like it or feel like it. So I think disclosure of that sort that's every day, I think would help. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, does it say anything in that agreement that if the university closes, you will still be required to make payment and keep up with the?
Correct. That language has always been in the lease, in the
It's always been in
agreements.
there.
And to your
And
point.
is that part, I mean, that, to me, that certainly, you said something about bolding, and when you said that, I thought that was good, whatever you're bolding, but that in particular would be particularly good.
That is not currently bolded or set to differentiate, but I think that's something that we'd be completely amenable to adjusting. Perhaps it may not happen this fiscal year as we've already started marketing and licensing. And to your point, Senator Rosa Pep, Medco Housing is separate, and when it's portrayed on the university's website, we're typically in a different section with other student housing projects, such as you mentioned the Varsity or the View. That's where our housing currently, if you were to get to a link, would be to be accessed. So I understand your point of how can we differentiate even more to make it less
And I
confusing to
appreciate
the
that, because
parents.
clearly the way it's been has not been enough. That's why you had lawsuits. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, we may want to, I mean, I'd like to, I don't know if it needs an amendment or I don't know what, to make that really clear. Even though it's in the agreement and for future agreements, that it be highlighted, bolded, maybe even a place where the student's initial within the contract, if they're not already initialing a specific part of the contract. Other than that, does anybody else have any other questions? Well, I want to thank you both very much. Very helpful.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Mr. Subcommittee Chair, you ready to go with your?
Chairman, whenever you're ready,
Okay. There's no, we didn't have anybody else here providing information on anything, did we?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right, well, other than that little bit of voting, yeah, Senator Jackson's a big winner. We're going to go and let the subcommittee take over for capital, and just keep your eyes open on your calendar. Lots happening. Thank you. We can do